Okay, I guess we'll get going. 7 o'clock. Yeah, so just wanted to, before we dive into anything, just thank you guys for jumping on for the last 14 weeks. It's been really good, and I hope you guys have got a lot out of it. And hopefully we can do something about again like this in the future. So today's session is kind of just an open Q&A. So if anybody's got any questions or wants clarification around some of the stuff that we've done, or just wants to ask questions regarding rugby and ARPTC and any coaching questions, things like that, then please feel free to ask as many questions or as little questions as you like. But yeah, for the next 20-25 minutes, just use me as a resource, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Well, I'm not sure how many people are on here, but I got a couple questions. One is kind of along the lines that we running the running lines that we were doing. In a lot of plays, a lot of teams these days, you see this where you have front line and the back line, where basically the front one is moving almost like a block on the pass. How does that tend to line up at, let's say, at club level in general play?
Yeah, so you're talking about the layers in attack, right?
Yeah.
It's being able to recognize that you can run a line and not receive the ball, and that being okay. Like I think a lot of the time, if people run a line or if they run next to the ball carrier, they expect the ball. But it's having the understanding that you're running a line to create space for other people. And so whether that's I think, and what you'll find is when people start to do that, they'll run a line, but they won't focus on it. So it's up to the ball carrier to make sure that they either hit the front option or the back option. So what I'll do is I'll try and share the screen, and we can go to So what we're looking at is effectively, let's just make it really simple. So we're kind of looking at that kind of option, right, where the ball can either go to the number 2 or to the number 3. And they're looking to hit that line. So the 3 comes out. So the 3 is running almost like that blocking line like you talked about. And the number 2 is coming outside the back. And what you'll tend to find is if the number 1 never passes the ball to 3, then the 3 will stop running that line because they want the ball, especially at the club level. Whereas if you give them the ball every so often, what it does is it motivates the number 3 to continue to run that line for the number 2, but also it starts to drag in these players. And then once you get used to that, the number 3 keeps hitting the ball. These players will stick over here, and then the number 2 can come around the corner into that kind of position. Whereas if you just keep hitting the 2 all the time, the defense will just keep spread out the way they are here. The other options are, obviously, you may have seen when the players are in kind of that almost that diamond position, and the ball goes across to there, and then you normally have a runner coming around the back. And so what they're able to do then is have this is called a tip option. So they can tip it onto the number 5, they can drop it down to the number 2, or they can pull it out the back to the number 6, who's coming around the corner. So that's quite useful for, again, sucking in these defenders, because if we just look at this position in here, you've got 4 players, so already you need to have these 4 defenders in. So already we've created some space out wide over here, allowing us to then move the ball and play out the back. So this is where we talk about attacking layers. So this is our first layer with the 2, the 3, and the 5. That's our first attacking layer. And so they're actually taking that first defense out. And then if the ball goes out the back, we've got our second attacking layer, which is the 6, the 4, and the 7 coming around the corner. Does that answer?
Yeah, the biggest thing that, I mean, growing up in rugby, it used to be that, you know, crossing let's say the 3 crossing in front of the 2 was in some situations considered obstruction of the opposition coming in to make the tackle. Or the 3 continuing to run the line where the ball is passed behind him basically comes to obstruction if he makes contact with the other line, I guess.
Yeah. It is a very fine line. So that's why you'll see the ball is being passed at the time where the players are crossing each other. So it actually, you can still either have the ball at the front or at the back. If you're offside and you run that line and you're actually stopping defenders, then you can't actually move the ball. It'll be a penalty against you. But if you're still an option to receive the ball, then you're able to run that line wherever you want and however you want. It's just if you actually physically stop defenders.
So it's a very fine line that they have to run. All right. And like I say, I don't know who else is on here. I'm not seeing any other faces. So.
I mean, that's fine. You know, I didn't expect many people to jump on, and because, you know, if there was questions, there would have been questions answered or asked in the 14 weeks we've had. So this is just an opportunity for everybody who wants to ask more questions, really.
All right. Okay, so that's one. That's basically like the block and slide play that a lot of teams used. Mm-hmm. The other one I had was the advantage of using, I know, and within the 5-yard scrum, 5-yard line out, a lot of them use the driving maul going towards the line. Is there any advantage to possibly using something like that within the 10-22 to gain you momentum in the attacking side of the field from a line out instead of bringing it in, taking it down, rocking it, and starting it over?
Yeah, I think there's always an advantage to any of the tools, right? So I think a driving maul is a really good, if you can get a really good driving maul going and actually gain momentum, like you say, what you actually start to do is bring players in to try and stop it. And then once you're on that front foot as the attacking team, you can then release the ball out wide. So I think it's a really useful way, if it's done effectively, to suck in the rest of the team of the defense.
So in a situation like that, you'd have to see as far as how your team matches up, scrum versus scrum or line versus line, you know, if you're way overpowering them or winning the line out every time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so let's say this is the halfway line, right?
Right.
Let's say we've got our driving maul. Let's just use these. This is let's call it a 7's driving maul. But so effectively, there's our defense lined up. There's our driving maul. Let's have a sweeper. So let's say that blue is actually gaining momentum. And what they're starting to do is actually drive down the field, and off they go. What starts to happen is, one, you're gaining yards. So the defense here need to get back on side. So that's one thing that they need to do. So the defense is on the back foot, so they can't actually launch off the line. What you might see is that number 5 will come in and try and stop them. Number 1 will maybe come a little bit closer to try and stop them as well. And if that's the case, then obviously 6 and 7 have got to pull across. And then at that point, what you're able to do is release the ball. So now what you've done is you created all this space out wide here. If that starts to slow down, if that doesn't start to slow down and that continues to gain momentum, then what you can do is you can add a couple of blue players in and just keep going and going and going. And the great thing about the maul, if you get a really powerful driving maul, there's only really one way to stop it, which is you're adding enough players in to let the maul come to a stop. If you try and drag the maul down, then you get a penalty against you.
All right.
Or you reach the try line. So there's not really many other options that you can do with the driving maul apart from just keep adding players in to try and stop it, unless you're willing to give a penalty away.
All right, and that would be an option generally if you have a larger, more agile scrum versus the opposition to some extent.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference between a scrum and a maul. So some teams are excellent in a scrum because they're very technically good, and I think in order to have a good driving maul, you need a very effective line out and spotting the weaknesses within the line out and making sure that you've got your setup right.
All right. Yeah, well, I mean, I might have worded it wrong, but I meant more like the line out. If you are winning every line out and kind of going against them every time coming out with the ball, it's kind of set it up, keep them in, because then they will want to try and break away to stop the line from progressing. All right. And then the only other one, I don't know if you ever got the question when I sent it with the email. The biggest one that I had is I seem to have a lot in the modern game. Everything is, well, majority of the time, it's run out. You get 1-2 players crash, 1-2 players crash. It's constantly almost like a rugby league type deal that they taking the ball in, and then eventually it runs out. But it's not as far as I would say like it used to be, where they had more of a defined 1-2 plays in the ruck or the maul, and then it was out running. So you have the backs more. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's just the changing of the type of coaching, or if it's a lot easier just to coach that type of rugby rather than a more flowing or open game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I think the conditioning of players has got better, right? So the players are becoming a lot fitter, faster, stronger. So the defense, their one-on-one defense is getting better. But also they're not competing at the breakdown defensively as much as they used to. So because the attacking options are so good going forward, there's not much point in defending the rucks, or at least competing at the breakdown. So if we're not competing at the breakdown, you've got 13, 14, maybe even sometimes 15 players on their feet defending. So with that being the case, there's less space on the field for you to move the ball into. So what they have to do, you may have heard the expression, you've got to earn the right to go wide. What happens is that you have to suck players in defensively and manipulate the defensive line and try and break the defensive line before you can actually move the ball. Because if you just keep moving the ball backwards and backwards and backwards and passing the ball down the line with the backs, their defensive line, and we talked about the tackle line, the gain line, and the that tackle line goes further and further and further in favor of the defensive team. So the one-off runners is because there's not many people running down, competing in the breakdown, so they can afford to have 2 or 3 in the ruck versus 5 or 6 on the attacking team. If you start throwing in 4 or 5 players into a ruck on defense, then you're going to start throwing 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 players into a ruck on attack to maintain the possession. So I do think it's the modern game. It's the modern conditioning of players, the ruck policies that we talked about. Are we going to compete on our own half kind of thing? Do we want to make it chaotic for the opposition? Do we want to make it hard for the opposition? What kind of team are we playing against? If I don't know if you've watched any of the more recent England games and the France games, their defense is phenomenal. And they're not really doing much at the breakdown, apart from when they see and smell opportunities to actually steal the ball.
All right. But wouldn't that also play into their hands? Like we talked about the skills, the attacking, what do you call it? preferences, where the skills come into play. I mean, if you put a good 9 or a good 10 in there, generally in that same situation, depending on the part of the field, with your combination, like you say, fitter, faster, these guys are bigger. That will bring into play, to me, again, the kicking game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it opens them up big time, because you are now using majority of your players to flatten the line, kind of like Argentina does, where basically they defend with all 14 or 15 players flat on the line. They really and truly have nobody in the backfield.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it plays both ways.
You know, I think the New Zealand Argentina game on the weekend, I think Argentina kicked the ball 28 times and New Zealand kicked the ball 36 times. So there's absolutely more kicking done in the modern game, because I think a lot of teams are going, right, well, we trust our defense and we're going to force you back and you've got to play out. And the more that we can push you back into your own 22, the more a chance that you're going to kick the ball out on the full. We get an attacking line out on the 10-meter line. That gives us a better platform to attack from.
All right, so it's gone from the old day, basically, where we used to use the backs to add a little more flair to the game, to more of a concentrated effort to break the line, which has added in more kicking opportunities, especially with the new kick pass and all that kind of stuff on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that's why as well, the front five, we talk about the front five and their skill set. Typically, you know, a tight head prop doesn't really have a good skill set. They're more used as a battering ram and you know, go forward and make yards. Whereas now you see the modern game, they've got a skill set, right? One of the most dangerous try scorers for New Zealand is Dane Coles, and he plays at hooker. Yeah, he
plays on the wing.
On the wing.
Yes.
Tries. So that, you know, the game has changed dramatically, and it changes every 6 to 12 months. It changes in terms of the tactics and how it's played. So it's some argue that it's a boring game to watch these days. Some argue that it's more of a chess match. It just depends on what your preferences are.
Yeah, I don't consider it a chess match. It doesn't quite reach the stage of football yet, where everything is predetermined before you even go out on the field as to what you're going to do, how, when.
Yeah, not yet.
No, I don't think we'll ever get there, though. If you keep the true blood in this game, I don't think we'll ever get there. The players still have a say on the field, especially at professional level.
No, for sure.
Yeah, those are mainly the things I had questions on, because, like I say, I grew up in the old school game versus the new deal. And well, the only other thing, I know you do sevens a lot. My only other question would be along the sevens line, as far as the role of the sweeper. If you use the same person, like a lot of the sevens teams, you see the guy that normally runs as the 9 is most of the time the sweeper, running from left to right, in, out, everything. But is there a general rule as to who does the sweeping, or can it be changed from the guy that's lagging behind the direction in which the ball is going?
Yeah, I mean, there's different sweeping strategies out there. Depending on what level you play at, I typically have somebody who is able to last 14 minutes and is able to run a long time. So they may not be the most physical when we look at the contact, but they're able to run longer and faster than most of the teammates, because they're able to constantly run across the field and come in and insert in different times. There's not necessarily somebody who should be in that position. There is something called, it's almost like a floating sweeper. So I'll see if we can get that up. So when we're looking at this kind of setup, so let's say our number 5 is our sweeper. Just draw on quick attack. When we're looking at this kind of formation, great. So the ball's with the number 2. Once the ball goes towards the edge and it comes over here, let's say the number 5 is now in control. that number 5 can come across, they're sweeping there, we might be able to drop this 7 back, and the 5 can maybe then insert, and the 7 can come across and cover across. And as soon as that ball is then released and comes out the ruck, number 7 comes back in, number 5 drops. So you're never necessarily with the same sweeper, but it just requires these guys to have a lot of communication, similar to a back 3 in 15s.
All right, yeah, that's what I was going to say. How
they play, right? So, but that requires a lot of communication, a lot of anticipation from the players, and a lot of understanding and a lot of willingness to actually pay attention and work with each other to keep moving back and forth, especially in a 7s game. It's quite difficult to do.
All right, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's pretty much like the little line that you run between the fullback and the 2 wings in it.
Yeah.
50s. All right. Yeah. Now, I like that game, but I'm only now starting to coach that to some extent. So.
Yeah, so sevens is interesting. So it's mainly it's the same game, right? It's still catch, pass, tackle, run. You do all the same things. There's still a ruck, there's still a line out, there's still a scrum. But what it allows you to do is actually develop players' skill set and decision making a lot faster than in 15s, because in 15s you've got your structures and your patterns that you have to start to run, and there's so much contact that you don't necessarily get fluidity, especially in the lower levels of the game, because the skill set drops. And so playing 7s allows players to actually develop and express themselves in ways that they wouldn't do on a 15s field. So I think 7s is a great development tool for 15s players. And I would definitely encourage anybody to play 7s, whether that's in the summer, and even the type 5 players who maybe shy away from it because it's too tiring. It's something that they should just jump on board with, because the amount of touches that they'll get on with the ball is way more than they will get in 15s.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you just mentioned it there, but for me that makes no sense to some of those players, because some of the guys that I've played 7s with, back row, second row, and I mean, they run, they can handle just like a 3/4. So it's, it doesn't make sense. It's just a fitness level, I guess, those guys don't want to get to. That is the only reason I could see that they don't want to. I mean, you've done it yourself. I mean, playing the game, especially 7s, you have so much fun. Yes, you're tired as hell when you come off the field, but you have so much more fun and more input. It challenges you mentally versus just physically all the time.
Yeah, and it's only 7 minutes long each half. It's fine. Yeah.
Try sprinting for 7 minutes. That's what they try to tell us. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to keep moving all the time. You just have to be in constant motion, and the team has to work as a unit. One man can't, like 15s, 2 or 3 guys can make a difference. In 7s, it basically is a 7-man unit. 2 or 3 guys is of very little use.
Yeah, there's something that we're talking a lot down here actually at the moment with ARPTC is the players changing the pace of the game. So recognizing when they should go fast and recognizing when they should slow down, recognizing when they can actually really go forward and attack the gain line versus moving the ball to manipulate the defense. So all those kind of things, that's what you do in 15s. You just do it in a much larger scale, and 7s, it's a lot easier to break it down and see it in action.
Yep. And then I guess the last thing I have to ask you about is, like, you keep talking all the time. I know one of my friends was at ARPTC last year, up from Trinidad, doing some coaching or learning some more about coaching. What is the cost-wise, and what is the ways that you can get into ARPTC through coach training or player training? Because I have a lot of girls that have been interested in possibly trying out for USA Eagles, that kind of stuff, but still need some work.
Yeah, I mean, so the easiest thing to do would be just to shoot me an email, and we can send you some pricing through on that kind of stuff, depending on who it is. Obviously, there is we have our residency programs, which are all the way through the summer kind of thing, like full intense programs. But then we also run 1 high school camps throughout the year and competitions, and also full residencies for high school as well. So depending on the level and the age, that kind of will vary. But if you shoot me an email, I'm more than happy to open the doors up to new players that want to join.
All right. And on the coaching level, let's say somebody's looking at improving their coaching, but you need, guidance from somebody else, like a mentor kind of program or anything like that.
Yeah, same thing. Shoot me an email. We can get it sorted for sure.
All right.
Marie, you've been very quiet.
I feel bad because I've had to miss a couple of weeks, so a little behind, but honestly, I don't have any questions right now.
That's fine. I mean, so the sessions that you've missed, I know the Texas Rugby Union have been putting them on Facebook. So
Yeah.
whatever is missed, or like all these sessions have been recorded, so you're more than welcome to jump on there and have a look at what you've missed. And so, and if you guys have got any questions, then please shoot me emails, and I'm happy to answer anything and anything. So don't be shy with that, and I'll just put my email in the chat as well, so you guys have it.